Hello everybody. Today we have a snow day. We had a bunch of ice and snow come in this morning. So today I'm going to be doing a flower bouquet watercolor tutorial. So grab your watercolors, grab your paintbrushes, your watercolor paper, your water, anything that you use for your watercolor paintings, and let's get on into it. So for my paper here, I have Strathmore, a travel size notebook that we got on clearance at Walmart. So I am using that today. It's a size 5x7, so it's a perfect travel size notebook. It does have string holding it together. So what I did was in my other books, I just cut the string and just pulled the paper apart. So it's a perfect size to do some flower bouquets. I have my watercolor paints, I have my jar of fresh water, and I have my Princeton Snap brushes, size 6 and size 2. So I already have some paint left on my palette, so what I'm going to do is just reactivate the red and the peach that I have on my palette already from the other day. So I just dip my brush in the water and just rub it on the palette so it reactivates that paint. This is why I love watercolor, because you can just let it dry and reactivate it. So for your flowers, you can do any kind of flower. I'm kind of just doing basic 3-petal flowers. So what I do is I kind of just do a petal shape, just wiggle my brush around, not thinking too much of it, just letting the brush do what it does. And you can also use reference photos if you want to. I sometimes do, I sometimes don't, depends on my mood. This is more of a looser look. So I do have quite a bit of water on that petal, so I'm just lifting up some of that water by tapping my paintbrush on a paper towel and then picking up that pigment with my brush. And you can also go in with a thicker consistency of another color or that same darker color that you were using and tap it on the inside of your petals while they're still wet, and you'll get a really awesome bleeding effect. And that can show a lot of depth with your flowers. So again, just doing some basic petal shapes. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just kind of just let your brush do what it will. And so I did add a little bit more darker paint on the outsides or the inside of the petals. So here I'm mixing up a peach that I had already on my palette, and I'm just doing dots basically for these little tiny flowers. So just clusters of dots or brush strokes here and there. You can really do whatever you want. I think watercolor is such a versatile medium. You can really do whatever you want and it'll turn out really awesome. So again, just not thinking too much about what I'm doing. I'm just placing shapes and, shapes. That's basically what this is, just really abstract, wonky looking shapes to look like little clusters of flowers. And then just tapping in some more pigmented color, so that means it doesn't have as much water in it as before. It's just right off of the tube of paint. And then some of the flowers had puddles of water, so I'm just picking up some of that water by dabbing my brush on a paper towel, and then with my dry brush picking up that water and that paint off of the flower. So now I grabbed a darker, kind of more purpley red. I don't know, it's not a mauve or mauve? It's not, it's like a it's like the same color I used for the flowers up top, but just added a little bit of purple. So whatever color that is. And here it's just, again, really random brush strokes. These flowers don't have to look exactly like a reference photo. You can just do petal shapes, and you can do them in any which way. You can do all of them facing forward, where the stamen would be facing towards you, or you can do all of them upside down. It doesn't matter. You can just do your flowers however you want. I'm going back in with that peachy color, and I am going to do more little clusters of flowers around the darker red flowers. So it kind of ties in the whole bouquet with all of the little flowers. So when you're doing bouquets, there's not really a formula, I'd say, that you use for how to design them, if we're going to be really specific. I like to do flowers in clusters of 3 or 5 because odd numbers tend to look a little bit better. You can place them a little more randomly than if you do even numbers of flowers. So if you do a cluster of 3 or 5 bigger flowers in the center, and then add in some little flowers around that, and then do your leaves like what I'm doing here, it's a very easy, simple way to do a bouquet of flowers. So now I'm mixing up a green. I think it's sap green, a little bit of a darker bluish green, I think some sepia, and then I'm also adding in a little bit of red to mute down that green. I like muted greens a lot for my leaves. So here, what I do is sometimes it's hard for me to think about where to put the leaves. So sometimes I do stems first, which is a easy way to place your leaves without actually doing your leaves yet. So I'm doing leaves all around the bouquet to figure out where I want everything to go, and I'll also place my stems as well. So the stems I like to do going down from the flowers to show the bouquet where you would hold them, and then kind of popping up in between all of the other flowers, and it gives the painting a little more depth when you can see some stems and some green leaves popping up in the middle of the bouquet. It kind of shows a flower is in front or behind a stem. It just gives a lot more depth. So now I'm going to go in with more green, and I'm going to start my leaves now. So what I do with my leaves is I use the tip of my brush at first, and then I just drag the belly of the brush upwards and do more pressure when you're pushing down so it's the big bulk of the leaf. And then as you come up, just gently lift up your brush so it comes to a point so you can get the tip of the leaf. And that's a super easy way to do leaves. You can also do them with just a few brush strokes if you're not super confident in pulling the belly of the brush and making it look perfect. You can just do leaves with a few brush strokes. So there's really no right way to do leaves. You do leaves how it feels most comfortable. And I do turn my page here and there. I usually don't tape down my pages. A lot of people do. If I'm not completely wetting down my paper, I'm not going to tape down my page, because sometimes for me it's a lot easier to be able to turn the image, the picture how I want it, so I'm not rubbing my arm or my hand across wet paint that hasn't dried yet. So here I'm just adding in a little bit of darker green to the ends and the tips of the brushes, to the ends and tips of the leaves, to make it look a little different, to throw in some texture and whatnot in there. You don't have to do this. If you want to, you can. It's just something that adds a little more depth and a little more personality. So here in this green, I think I used a sap green here, and then I added in some Payne's gray. And a Payne's gray is more of like a bluish dark gray, and that really helps to cool down the color of the leaves. And I grabbed my size 2 brush here, and I'm going to do small leaves now. And for the small leaves, you'll see that I do the leaves in a few brush strokes. So I do 2 or 3 brush strokes for the leaves. So for the small ones, I don't pull the belly of the brush because I'm not super confident by doing that with small leaves. So it is still a really easy way to get cute little dainty leaves, you know, without having the quote unquote proper technique of doing leaves. And I'm just going in and placing leaves wherever I feel like they could go. So here for the small ones, I'm going to start adding them into the flowers and into the little bunches of the peach flowers. I'm going to add little leaves into those. And now for this stamen, I'm just I grabbed some brown and some black, and I'm doing a rather thick consistency of the paint so it'll show through onto the stamen. And I'm just doing little dots or lines for the stamen or the center of the flowers. It's very easy, there's really nothing to it. And that's it for this watercolor bouquet of flowers. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if I can do more watercolor tutorials for you guys. I would absolutely love to do it. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video.